Hello, booktube. My name's Ted, and this is the Speculative Bookshelf. I was recently tagged in a video by Kim, the lifelong reader, for the Reading Shifts tag. And this consists of 7 questions about your reading habits and how they've changed over time. And this tag was originally created by Hannah at Hannah's Books. And being a new channel myself, I don't have a big network of other booktubers, but I will tag a few others and hope you'll respond. And so this tag, it consists of 7 questions. The first one being, how has your reading developed over your lifetime? Do the kinds of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books you loved most earlier in your life? If you've seen big changes in your reading since you've matured, what might explain your changing interests? Well, I wouldn't really say that my interests have changed over time. I've read all genres all my life, and they just go in cycles, though. So I'll spend months or maybe even years reading science fiction, then I'll go on to horror. I'll go on a horror binge, and it wasn't just 100% one genre or another, but it would be primarily that. And I was doing just that, reading genre fiction, the science fiction, mystery, fantasies, with only an occasional mainstream or literary fiction. However, about 25 years ago, I got a job that allowed me to just work on my own in a quiet spot, work on my little project, and I was able to listen to audiobooks all day long. And it was about that time that I also discovered Audible audiobooks. And for some reason, I don't know if I don't even know how it worked each month. Did they send you a newsletter with recommendations or what? I don't know. But for some reason, uh, I started a stretch of listening to literary fiction or just mainstream fiction, such as Richard Yates, Philip Roth, Jeffrey Eugenides, just stuff like that. And that went on for quite a while. And right now I'm back on a speculative fiction kick, which basically covers several genres of science fiction, fantasy, horror, weird fiction. So basically, the books I loved earlier in life are the same books I love now. So then the question number 2 asks, do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? For example, do the seasons affect what you read for pleasure? Similarly, might you read very different kinds of books while on vacation? So, no, I'm not a seasonal book reader. I don't read Christmas books at Christmas time. I don't read Halloween or horror books in particular uh, at Halloween time. And if I go on vacation, I'm just going to pack whatever. It'll just be a continuation of whatever I was reading at home. And then question 3 asks, do specific experiences in your life ever shape what you choose to read? For example, did you read obsessively about child rearing when your kids were young, about gardening as spring is about to begin, about the experience of grief when someone you loved died? There have been a couple of times in my life where a certain experience or just a certain incident just got me going on a certain genre, maybe. For example, um, when I got involved in a community theater in the Air Force, I was one of my fellow actors had a Michael Moorcock Elric novel that she was reading backstage, and I inquired about it, and she says, "Oh, you should read this. It's really great." And I read it, and it was really great. And so, if you know Michael Moorcock and Elric, there's quite a few books in the series, so that got me started on Michael Moorcock. Later in life, another friend told me to read Follow the River by James Alexander Thom. It's a historical fiction. And that got me off on a historical fiction kick. Uh, Novels like Lonesome Dove. There's a novel called Fort Worth, which is a generational saga about that Texas city. And then for a while, I had a subscription to a magazine called Firsts. It's basically a book collector magazine. And there I read an article about Douglas C. Jones, who wrote a lot of historical fiction concerning the uh, Native Americans. And one that got me going on that was Arrest Sitting Bull. So like I said, I got off on historical fiction and then particularly more Douglas C. Jones. And then aside from friend recommendations, if I went on vacation, we went to Oregon one year and, learned about Lewis and Clark. And that prompted me to buy a book on Lewis and Clark from, incidentally, probably the best used bookstore in America, Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon. And then after visiting family in Germany, uh, it just, along with my stamp collecting interest, uh, that prompted me to read up more on historical old Germany. Although I didn't read any particular books, it was mostly online, finding online articles. And then question 4. Have there been any times in your life when circumstances have limited or changed your reading in some way? Perhaps caretaking responsibilities or a big move that made it hard to find as much time to read as you'd like, or personal illness that made it harder to concentrate, or maybe just long-term travel that might have limited your book choices. How do you deal with those circumstances? Well, the only thing that's really interfered with my book reading interests are my other interests. I'm a In my life, I'm a collector. I'll collect anything. Not anymore. I used to. Uh, I've collected uh, comic books, uh, depression glass. For those who don't know what depression glass is, that's back during the Depression era. The soap companies like Tide, the detergent companies, uh, they put promotional items to prompt you to buy their product. Glassware, glasses and dishes in these soap boxes. So that was during the Depression era. So that's referred to as depression glass. So anyways, I collected that for a while. I collected baseball cards, comic books, vinyl record albums, particularly uh, film soundtrack albums, and uh, highly collectible classical music albums like Mercury Living Presence, London Bluebacks, RCA Living Stereos. So whenever I jumped to a new collecting interest, I read lots of books on those areas and subscribed to publications. Like with comics, there's the Comics Journal and the Comics Buyer's Guide, a weekly newspaper. And this was a thick newspaper too. You wouldn't think that there's that much to write about comic books every week, but there was. So that went on for many years. I mean, I got a little bit of reading in there, although it was during that period I did get my historical fiction reading in. But yeah, so mainly it's just been uh, other interests that have kind of diverted my attention from books. And how did I deal with that? Yeah, that just let it run its course, which it did. I don't collect anything but ebooks now and stamps. No, I should say that I collect stamps. Like I said, I have another YouTube channel called TED Talk Stamps. Check it out. So, anyways, going on to the next question. Let's see, booktube number 5. Booktube is full of discussions of reading slumps, when dedicated readers seem to lose interest for a while in books. Sometimes they just can't find a book that appeals to them. Have you ever experienced a slump? And if so, how did you handle it? If not, do you have any advice to give people who are experiencing slumps? So, the only slumps I've experienced are not ones where I just can't get into reading, but like I said, ones where I've just been so scattered and, my interests have been divided among other areas that I didn't get as much reading in as I liked, or uh, even none for, months at a time. But I've never experienced a slump where, uh, if you see my stamp collecting videos, you'll see my wall of bookshelves where I had tons and tons of uh, not just hardcovers, but vintage paperbacks, vintage uh, science fiction and fantasy and horror paperbacks. And so I never felt a slump where, oh, I just don't feel like reading. It's just, there was always something of interest for me on my shelf. Uh, so no, I can't really say I've experienced any reading slumps. Therefore, I can't really give any advice to anyone else who might be suffering from a reading slump. So I'll just move on to the next question. Number 6 is, booktubers also talk about book hangovers, when readers are so moved by a book that they find it difficult to move on to a new book. Have you ever felt this way? I don't feel that way in the sense that, oh, I felt so good about a book that I can't think of another book. I can't bring myself to read another book yet. What often happens is, if I like a book that much, I go on and read more of that same author that I haven't read. For instance, it happened with back in 1984, 85, somewhere, when I was writing to my cousin in Poland. She told me how she had just completed reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez' 100 Years of Solitude. So I went right out to the mall, to Walden Books, or uh, I forget what that other one was. There were two major chains, mall chains at that time. I went to one or the other and picked up 100 Years of Solitude, and that impressed me so much. After I got done, I just went through a couple of more of his. I went through then Love in the Time of Cholera, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. So I got my fill of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So no, a book hangover won't make it difficult to move on to a new book. On the contrary, it prompts me to pick up more books by that author. And then finally, the last question is question number 7. Tell us about a few books that almost always work for you, something that might have remained a favorite throughout your life despite any changing reading tastes, something that always seems to hit just the right spot when you need a lift, or perhaps some lifetime book hangover where the text will always be at the back of your mind. Well, I don't have a few books to tell you about that. I do have one author, and that's Ray Bradbury. He's my favorite author. My favorite book is Dandelion Wine, and he's written a zillion short stories. And I had most of his paperbacks of all his short stories. Plus, I had a big compilation book, The Short Stories of Ray Bradbury. So if I ever was undecided, or maybe even, kind of in a reading slump, wondering what to read, Ray Bradbury was my go-to. Uh, Pull out that big chunker of the stories of Ray Bradbury and just open it up at random and just read that story, and it's sure to do the trick. So that's my response to the reading shifts tag. I wouldn't say my tastes have shifted so much as that they just go through natural cycles. I just go from one genre to another. And like I said, right now it's in the speculative fiction. However, watching Kim, the lifelong reader, she's kind of she's kind of thrown a spanner in the works there because her reviews prompt me to read some of the books that she mentions. For instance, I've recently, just within the past month, read 3 of Charles Frazier's books. Charles Frazier, of course, the author of Cold Mountain. And oddly enough, Cold Mountain is not one I've read yet. I've got it on hold in my Libby app. And currently, I just started today. I just started 13 Moons by him. And then previously, I did Verena, which is a story about the wife of the Confederate President Jefferson Davis. And then before that, the Trackers, and then Nightwoods. So thanks to Kim, I got on a Charles Frazier kick, and they're all the books are different, and they're all great. I love them. So that takes care of that. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and until next time, happy reading.